one unilateral move from any Western country to impose a no-fly zone or to get engaged in the political and the revolution that's taken place in Libya. But we have said all along that under the umbrella of the United Nations and the Security Council, that a no-fly zone should be imposed. We think that this is relevant and this is critically important to at least diminish, if not stop altogether, the onslaught that is going on now by Gaddafi and his regime.
But whether it is imposed with, perhaps under the guise of a Security Council resolution or not, it does amount, doesn't it, to an act of war. This kind of military escalation of the conflict, do you see it as being in the long-term interest of Libya, or would it simply play into the hands of Colonel Gaddafi, giving him some kind of justification for retaliation?
I honestly don't see an escalation beyond what today is from the air and the sea and the ground. People are getting bombarded and they are getting shot at, bombs are getting dropped, missiles are getting fired at them. I don't see any further escalation. What would it be? How much worse can it get for the man on the street or the woman or the child in Zawiya today? How much worse can it get? What happens is that what would happen is that Gaddafi will not be able to fly his planes over Zawiya or Ras Lanuf or anywhere else, or Benghazi for that matter, or Tripoli. And that means also on the ground, maybe, just maybe, that the people of Libya can at least face Gaddafi and his troops eye to eye and man to man, as they say, rather than to have this unequal confrontation that we are just witnessing.
Mansour al-Kikhi, how effective do you think a no-fly zone will be? It will require the military attack of Libya's air defense systems, but beyond that, will it protect the civilians in Libya? Will it force President or leader Muammar Gaddafi to leave power, do you think?
Well, let me tell you one thing. I want to take a different track from what Ali said. It's a little bit different. First of all, I do think that the international community needs to assume responsibility and remove this madman. He has not only hurt Libya, he has hurt the world. And it's about time that the world stood up for something and said, hey, you cannot do this anymore. Can you imagine if this guy had nuclear weapons, what he would have done? I mean, it isn't only Libyans right now. Libyans are asking for a small thing. The new no-fly zone is basically irrelevant, if you can say. But I think it is a war. It is a declaration of war against Gaddafi. The world should at least the civilized society, should make a stand vis-à-vis this man. Should then make a stand vis-à-vis such regimes and say, you cannot do this to your people. You cannot do this to anyone. And if it needs a no-fly zone, impose a no-fly zone. If it needs supplying the people with weapons, supply them with weapons.
But doesn't this complicate perhaps the situation? The imposition of this no-fly zone by Western powers and others, does it not risk undermining the nationalist domestic nature of this uprising?
I don't think it will. I think for those people who are dying down there, they don't really care where that help is coming from, and for most Libyans as well. Libyans want to see they're at the end of this man. And the imposition of no-fly zone will not make a slightest bit of difference to somebody who's having a son or a daughter killed.
Henry Schuler, you met Muammar Gaddafi. You sat down with him for a couple of hours back in the 1980s. He's made it quite clear time and again that he has no official position to step down from. And he's also said that he will fight in Libya until the last bit of blood. Do you have any doubt that he will do just that? Do you think that there is truth to the fact that he may cut a deal with the opposition and flee the country?
That's up to the opposition to decide, not to the United States or Britain or the rest of the world community. If they want to let him flee the country rather than bring him to justice, that's up to them. But I think that he will not, he hasn't many options to get abroad, only if he cuts a deal through Musa Kusa. And that's the last possible thing that the Libyan people, the Libyan Democrats want to happen. So I think that there are a great many things that we can be doing short of a no-fly zone. While the debate is going on over the no-fly zone, we should certainly recognize the regime that has been established in Benghazi. We should send a high-level emissary to Benghazi to meet with those people, to establish the kinds of communications that are required to establish sharing of intelligence that we are collecting on Gaddafi's troop movements. They should be shared with the Libyan people. We should arranged to disrupt the command and control system of the Gaddafi command. We should disrupt their propaganda broadcasts. We should make sure that the people in Benghazi have secure communications equipment. We should take measures to restore the internet and cell phone, all of which can be done. All of that can be done from well offshore and without having boots on the ground or even planes in the sky. That is going to be a long debate in this country as to whether that's the appropriate and necessary course to pursue. But we've got a great deal more in terms of humanitarian aid that we can send in by ship now to Benghazi, and this should be pursued first in my judgment. And I think a very critical component is that Musa Kusa, who is conspicuously absent from the no travel restrictions and from the asset freeze, should be quickly added to that so that it becomes clear to the Gaddafi forces and to his opponents